Chris Brown, Steve Tasker with you here on One Bills Live. And happy to be joined now by my radio broadcast partner on the Bills Radio Network, also former Bills center, Eric Wood, joining us as he does every Monday to give us his thoughts on Buffalo's latest game. Fortunately, this one is a convincing victory. And if you listen to Eric's keys to the game prior to kickoff, he said it was a Marv Levy special. I told him this, Steve. He said the Bills have to run, stop the run, and not have turnovers. And for the most part, they accomplished all three, didn't they, Eric?
Yeah, they did. And yeah, I kept it old school for a couple reasons. One, this Jets pass defense is one of the tops in the NFL. I think statistically they come in at number 3 in the league pass-wise, but their yards per carry and their yards per game given up on the ground was an area that you could attack them. If you get in a pass fest against the Jets, they are super talented up front. They can generate pressure on the passer. And so yesterday, the Bills ran the ball 38 times, passed it 32. I wouldn't say that's going to be the MO for Joe Brady the rest of the season. This was a lopsided one after about the second quarter, and so that skews those numbers, but they were able to produce on the ground, which I believe was a big reason to set up the amount of yards that Josh was able to get through the air and getting to 275 on the game. The Bills defense kept Breece Hall in check, which they gave up a long one to him in the first one, and they were able to run the football. It also helps, and you talk about complimentary football, when you are playing with a multiple score lead for most of the game, and then you make a team one-dimensional, and you let, the healthiest group on the team, your defensive line, really tee off on Zach Wilson. They get 6 sacks, and then I don't really count that one right before the half, a turnover. They played clean the rest of the way. Very few even risky plays with the football throughout the game, and Reggie Gilliam starts off the game with a bang, causing a fumble, gives them that turnover lead in the game on the first opening kickoff.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier about the Jets' run defense, and I thought one of the problems that they had, this Bills, you never see the Bills run it more than they pass it these days with Josh Allen, and you just said they did. That's kind of been the Jets' MO. Their offense can't score. Nobody's afraid that their offense is going to score. So teams can run the football and shorten the game and just get a field goal. And I said it, in the Five Presidents text loop last night, all my old guys, this is the only time you can ever say, what, field goals might win this. You never say that in a game, right? It's like, wow, if you can't settle for field goals against this team, against this Miami Dolphins team or this Kansas City Chiefs team. But the Jets, yeah, field goals might do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when Mekhi Becton went out at left tackle. Right tackle was already injury for them. Once you have both of your edges exposed and you have backups in the game, really that's Mekhi likely should have been their starter, but Dwayne Brown was brought in as well. So essentially you're working with your third left tackle of the season. Your right tackle is already out for the game. You got your right guard out playing right tackle. If they could get them down a couple scores, this defensive line was going to be able to feast on them. And yes, this is a Jets offense that's been pretty much historically bad. We were tracking the possessions throughout the game, and they got over 40 straight possessions, obviously games leading up to the Bills as well, without scoring a touchdown. So this offense for the Jets has really struggled, and it just seems like offensively, especially, that organization's in a tough place. Now, obviously, you bring in Aaron Rodgers, and he goes out so early in the first game against the Bills with an Achilles injury, but he handpicks the offensive coordinator. He brings in Randall Cobb, who wasn't out there yesterday, and he's older in his career and probably no impact the rest of the year. Alan Lazard has really struggled. They bring him in for $10 million a year. Tim Boyle was kind of his handpicked backup behind Zach Wilson. There is the Rodgers effect in a big way. And then when he goes out, this offense is in a really tough position without him.
We've gotten this far without discussing the changes that Joe Brady made to Buffalo's offense. So why don't we've kind of talked about that through the first couple hours of the show today on our behalf, but what were your impressions of the way Joe Brady tweaked and altered the production and execution level of the offense?
Yeah, as we talked about on the broadcast, Chris, the first thing that stood out to me was the use of motion, especially with Stephon Diggs, constantly moving him around, not letting the Jets get keyed in on where Stephon Diggs was going to be during the game. He only had 4 catches for 26 yards yesterday, but the amount of effect that a receiver like Stephon Diggs, even if he's not producing at a high rate, when you're putting him in motion, when he's flaring out on a bubble screen, but you're still running the football up the middle, you got to give him some credit, even when the big time production isn't there. So we noticed that right off the jump. The game starts with an orbit motion by him, and then the second play of the game, he's coming across the formation as well. And so scripted plays, what's the MO early? We're going to use pre-snap motion. I love how Dan Orlovsky says it, with intention to impact. It's got to be intentional motion, and it's intentional to create an impact on the play. And so we saw that early from Joe Brady. I believe I saw it was the most motion used pre-snap by a Bills offense since 2019. So that would likely stay a trend. Another thing, and this isn't a huge knock on Ken Dorsey, and we're talking about one sample size and you're playing a majority of game with a lead and in multiple score after the third possession of the game, but it just seemed like this Bills offense had more time at the line of scrimmage to operate. It seemed like Joe Brady, whether he was scripting them before the drives or whether they were staying on schedule better as an offense, it just seemed like the calls were coming in quicker this week. And I hope there's analytics and evidence out there to back that point up, but that's just how it felt. And I feel like me and Chris, we were both talking about it through the game, that it just felt like there was less times throughout the game where we were thinking, oh gosh, are we going to call timeout and burn one of our timeouts, or do we rush this 3rd and 7, which is such a crucial play in the game? So I noticed both of those. A lot of the run game concepts seem similar, and especially to the backside of the backfield, 2 plays in particular, the long touchdown that goes to Ty Johnson. So we see more Ty Johnson usage in this game than we have the rest of the season really combined. And he makes an impact in a big way, scoring that long touchdown on the play action out of the backfield. Love that play. It's a man beater. A lot of times on 4th and 1, 4th and 2, you go under center in a heavy formation, you're going to get man-to-man defense because that's going to be what's going to make it more advantageous for you to stop the run. Well, you have the middle linebacker man-to-man coverage on Johnson, who starts downhill, so he's got a hold, and then he goes out in the flat, and it's a foot race. And I like Ty Johnson against CJ Mosley all day of the week. And so I love that wrinkle. And then the touchdown pass to James Cook, where they put him out, split out wide to the left, then motion him into the backfield. Then they run play action and he slips out the other side. Again, it's a man defense beater. And, those are 2, kind of game plan specific, nuanced plays, situational plays, a red zone play and a 4th down play, kind of your 2 go-tos. And when we've come on here and talked about, where I have had some critiques from Ken Dorsey, it just wasn't those, game plan specific, set you up throughout the game types of plays that I felt like we saw from Joe Brady in his first action.
Describe to us why it's different and how it's better, it seems, when you use the running backs in the passing game, not just as checkdowns. I mean, these guys were catching these balls with routes. They were out of the backfield, had a place to be, had a timing to get there, instead of having them maybe pass protect for a second and then just turn around and face Josh and say, hey, I'm here if you need me. But these routes last night, particularly early in the game when they were catching everything, they were actually running routes, like releasing out of the backfield. They had free release or play action release where they were running hard right out of the gate. Describe why that's different for a defense to look at and say, oh, my God, this is different.
Yeah, because instead of them being able to retreat, instead of those cover 2 cornerbacks, which 2 of Josh's interceptions this year have been from cover 2 cornerbacks that are bailing on their flat responsibility and hopping back into that hole shot, because we haven't included the running backs. And Josh hasn't been as patient as he was yesterday at times in just taking those checkdowns to the running backs. We also mentioned on the broadcast, there was a few times where he got the ball extremely fast. It wasn't that, hey, the play broke down, it's been 4 seconds, okay, now I'm going to dump it down. Well, now the defense can route to the football. He was getting those backs the ball in space where they had time and space to go make moves. And so all that does for now is probably suck up that second level of the defense even more. And then the Bills had tremendous production throwing it towards the middle of the field. Now, when you have DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner on the outside, we talked about it in the pregame that likely your best chances of being able to throw the ball against this Jets defense was going to come kind of across that second level, middle of the field of the defense. And if you were able to establish a run game that's really going to open it up, well, also when you're checking the ball down, when you get into your backs, then they have to respect those as well, which also can open up that second level of the defense.
Eric, Khalil Shakir has emerged over these last 4 weeks. Granted, the team has gone 2-2 over that stretch, but since the Tampa game, he has 14 receptions for 388 yards and a touchdown. He's averaging, if my math is correct here, 27.7 yards a catch. Obviously, it's inflated by that 81-yarder yesterday over a small sample size. But what can we say about his emergence and the fact that it's coming on the heels of Kincaid's emergence so quickly? What can that do in terms of making this passing game more difficult to defend going forward?
It takes a lot of pressure off of Stephon Diggs, and it takes a lot of pressure off of Josh to force feed Diggs when you have guys like Kincaid and you guys have a guy like Shakir that's stepping up, and especially the way that Shakir can make you pay after the catch as well, which he's shown. He's shown it, throughout kind of this second half of the season so far, that he will make you pay after the catch. Obviously, yesterday was a big one, but he's shown that ability, getting up the field for first downs, and that just takes pressure off of an offense. I mean, early in this game yesterday, you have Dalton Kincaid get 6 catches in the first half, which really was the most productive player in the first half for this Bills offense. He continues to impress week in and week out. For those that are watching at home as well right now, we're getting to see the replay of the long Shakir touchdown. Well, Dalton Kincaid goes down the field, doesn't block anyone in the back, just kind of throws a hip check, which takes out 2 defenders, which is just incredible hustle. And, they're going to sit in the offensive meeting room today, and they're not going to talk as much about Dalton Kincaid's 6 catches. They're going to talk about that play where he hustled down the field and sprung him on a block. Those are the types of plays. I mean, you want to talk about impressing Sean McDermott. Those are the little things that he's looking for. And, the day after a game, whatever the media and we all see, that might not be what Sean McDermott's handing out game balls and complimenting the next day and using you as an example from the room. Oftentimes it's little plays like Kincaid has made really the last few weeks blocking as well.
And one of the things about this game that kind of gets overlooked because of the situation the Jets' offensive line is in is how good the Bills' pass rush was yesterday. Leonard Floyd is an absolute animal, and he's having as good a season as anybody's had for the Bills under Sean McDermott defensively. And Ed Oliver as well has gotten kudos from around the league about how good a penetrator and how good a pressure maker he is. Doesn't have a ton of sacks, but he is certainly helping guys get them because he's playing on the other side of the line of scrimmage. Talk to us a little bit about, and I saw Vaughn last night. Vaughn flashed for a minute. For me, he still didn't get on the stat sheet, but I'm seeing something out of Vaughn now, some explosion and some speed off the edge. I still don't think he's using his full repertoire. But what do you see from the Bills' D-line going forward as Vaughn gets a little better and better, starts to get a higher percentage, plus the way A.J. Epinesa, Leonard Floyd, all those guys are playing, Greg Rousseau, all those guys are playing up front?
Yeah, and Shaq Lawson adds a sack as well yesterday. He brings the physicality and toughness on front on rundowns. That's impressed me really since he's come back to the Bills. He's played extremely well in that role. But, and you said it well, Steve, part of the reason that Leonard Floyd has been so productive this year is Ed Oliver. I mean, Ed Oliver is rushing the passer so well inside that doesn't give quarterbacks any room to step up at the pocket or confidence to step up at the pocket at times. And so that allows Leonard Floyd to use his elite speed off the edge to just smoke tackles at times. And A.J. Epinesa and Greg Rousseau, they bring a combination of physicality and speed off the edge, which is, that's always tough for us O-linemen to deal with. And then I'm with you on Vaughn, and it's coming. I'll say this about Von Miller right now. Von Miller, I played against him multiple times in my career. We prepared for Von Miller, and a lot of times Von Miller isn't the guy that comes in the first 10 plays of the game and gets a sack or two. A lot of times it's him setting stuff up throughout the game. He's really working you. He's just absolutely, I mean, you guys know this from hearing him speak and being around him. He's so bright. Well, a lot of what he's doing throughout a game is setting himself up for later. Well, because of the injury and because he's just not fully back and he's not getting the his full kind of 50 snaps he's used to getting, well, it's the bull rush early in the game that allows him to use his ghost move later. It's the ghost move that then sets up the bull rush. It's, there's so much that Von brings to the table throughout a full game that I just feel like that's hurting his cause right now, because when he comes in, it's 3rd and 8, and he's likely running the edge, and it allows these tackles to not be as inferior of Von as they probably should be.
Mm-hmm. Eric,
I'll say this too. I'm not saying it's a disproportionate amount, but he is still getting chipped. There's a lot of times when Von's on the field, there's a running back or a tight end giving some presence to the tackle, or the offensive line is sliding that way. And so, similar to what I was saying about Diggs earlier, that even sometimes when the numbers aren't there, it's hard to quantify the impact they have on a game. It's still amazing. Without a sack right now this season, they're still showing him respect in those situations.
Eric, when the trade was made by Brandon Beane to acquire Rasul Douglas, just looking at his resume, you could tell he had a nose for the football. But to get this kind of production just in his first 3 games as a Buffalo Bill, when there is an acclimation period, especially when you come to a team mid-season, to do what he is doing with so little time on the field with his fellow teammates, this is nothing short of remarkable as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it truly is. And when you look at the fumble recoveries, to me, fumble recoveries have a certain element of luck to them. But if you're not the one that's hustling to the football every play, you'll never be the lucky one to pick up the fumble. And so that just shows what type of hustle that he brings. And we knew that he was going to be an effort guy when he came here, that he was going to be a guy that fit into the locker room. You could just tell that from the way his teammates in Green Bay reacted to his trade. But the way he's played in the passing game and really getting thrusted right into action when they probably wanted to sit him for a few weeks and let him kind of gear up in this defense. And the way he stepped in and played right away shows me how intelligent of a football player he is. And then, man, the way he could take the football away on the outside, I mean, this just appears to be one heck of a pickup, and it already has been. I mean, for what they gave up to bring him in the building, he's 29 years old, but he hasn't played a ton of ball to create a ton of wear and tear on his body as a 29-year-old. And so, to me, that's a special pickup there.
So going forward now, the big question is, how will this offense evolve? And the best offenses are never the same from week to week. They're going to evolve, and they're going to add some things and take some things out and change some things within. What do you expect from this Joe Brady offense going forward? I mean, it's a pretty good early returns.
It has been, and I'm excited to see where it grows into. As a defense, you already have more to prepare based upon the stuff that Joe Brady showed last week. And I mentioned on the broadcast, the jet sweep to Hardy goes for -2, but then for the rest of the game, they have to respect the fact that we might hand one of those off again. And to me, and I know this won't surprise you that I might say this, but the way the offensive line's playing right now, you give Joe Brady tremendous flexibility. I mean, they're run blocking very, very well. The relationship with James Cook and this offensive line right now, and Chris said it perfectly, his timing as a back, and the way that at times he's hitting the hole really fast. There's other times he looks like Le'Veon Bell back there waiting for the play to develop, waiting for his pullers, and showing a lot of patience. For a second-year guy, he's developing just an elite vision in this league. And so you have this run game that you have confidence in, and the offensive line's playing so well and pass blocking well is too. Your options are pretty much endless as an OC. And then you go to the fact that you have Diggs, Kincaid, you got Shakir emerging. You like your weapons there in the pass game as well.
Yeah, and I'll give you a chance to throw some more bouquets out about this offensive line, because this is a defensive front that is very difficult to win the line of scrimmage against for a 60-minute game, let alone even half the game. And I know the yards per carry doesn't look sexy at 3.5, but Cook averages over 4 on the game. And I felt just at face value, without watching the game back again, that Buffalo's O-line had the better of that battle. There was some penetration at times that blew some plays up. I recall, a couple of Cook runs out wide where he had to redirect because of penetration up the middle from Quinnen Williams and guys like that. But I felt overall Buffalo's offensive line won the majority of the battles at the line of scrimmage last night, and it made a huge difference.
I agree. And look, coming into the season, we assumed you pick up Connor McGovern, you know what you're getting from Deion Dawkins and Mitch Morse. You felt pretty good about the center on left. Well, you're starting a rookie guard. How's that going to work out? And for the most part this year, Osiris Torrance has played well. And then Spencer Brown, who's taken a lot of criticism early in his career, whether that's fair or not, based upon the injuries and him playing as a young guy, he's played well this year. And he really has stabilized himself in that right tackle position, and to where, I don't know that I saw any time yesterday where they were providing him any extra help against a really good defensive front. So, yeah, this offensive line has played well. Deion Dawkins, the way he pulls from the left tackle spot, Steve, Will Wolford, one of the best left tackles to ever do it. And Will was a former basketball player. They weren't pulling him around from his left tackle spot to the right side of the line. The way Deion Dawkins moves out there, he's a special talent. And I knew from the day he walked in the building back in 2017 that he was gifted athletically, but he continues to be that same guy now, as he's matured into one of the veterans on this team. And yesterday he was a battering ram. They kept running the same tackle pull play, and he would just come around the line of scrimmage. And he got under their skin so bad that they wanted to fight him coming up the tunnel.
Yeah, I saw that as well. He had one of the best 30 seconds of the season for an offensive lineman there when he blew those two guys up, flopped on them, and then comically laid on his back on the ground after the guy pushed him over. How angry and frustrated those Jet players were. By the way, you mentioned Will Wolford. He was actually at the game yesterday. He was in the house.
Yep.
So he got a chance to see all of that. You're right. Deion is a rare dude who can pull up through there. And, of course, if you're going to run the ball 38 times, the offensive line, and particularly with success, it starts to get really good down inside. And I think that's where you saw finally, after 10 games, the frustration of the Jets' defensive guys starting to bubble over. They started getting really frustrated, knowing no matter how well they were doing against the Bills' offense, if they had a good series, if they got a 3-and-out, which they didn't do too much last night, if they did get a 3-and-out, it was going to be meaningless because they were just going to be back on the field and the score was going to be the same or worse. So that was a little bit of what was going on last night in that second half of that game. Bill's offensive line, you could start to see the hopelessness of the Jets' defense.
Oh, you could. And you could see them bickering on the CBS broadcast from the monitor in front of us. And, it's not fun losing games over and over. I'm sure the way they've built that team, you have a defensive-minded head coach. They have a ton of talent on defense. They tried to bolster the offense this offseason, but when you lose your quarterback a few plays into the season, it's going to be tough sledding. And that still is one of the best defenses in football.